The FHA basic lending course, correct? It is what the course title says. It is a basics course, okay? But we're going to go over a lot of the changes that have been going on. You're all aware that FHA has changed a little bit? Okay. No? No? Okay, well, you're going to hear a lot of changes. It's kind of interesting, too, because they are changes on changes, and then we're not sure if they really are changes. And there's a number of things that are happening, okay, still happening in Washington that could affect how we do FHA loans. So I believe that FHA was the proper vehicle to use for a lot of people that got into subprime lending. Okay, the problem was that FHA, even to this day, has an antiquated process to be an approved mortgagee. Okay, it's not consistent with the rest of the mortgage marketplace. Now, hopefully, this has been going on since really the early 2000s is the FHA Reform Act. They just keep passing it to the next year and putting a new year on the end of the act. Okay? It is still hung up in Congress. Now, we're seeing bits and pieces of it fall out into law, which is what we're going to talk about here today. But the approval process is still a problem. Now, had Congress reacted to that and made it a little easier and allowed HUD some latitude and the director some latitude, what we would have found is that more brokers would have been FHA approved. And more brokers would have used the proper vehicle to get people into housing than using the substitute vehicle, which was subprime. Now, I'm not saying all subprime loans were FHA, don't get me wrong. Okay. But I'm saying that there are quite a few of them that would have been FHA, all right, that would have really eased up the situation. So, now, what's happened over the last 10 months is that there have been significant changes, and these changes really didn't come about through any reform act of FHA. They were all tacked on to other bits of legislation that became changes to FHA. And what happened is that we ended up with some changes. We ended up with some moratorium on changes, which we're going to talk about all these. And we ended up with some changes that may not be changes. So when we put the book together, we had a dilemma. Do we put it together the way it stands today, or do we put it together so that a year from today it is at least somewhat accurate? Okay? So what you're going to find is there's going to be contradictory information in your book. And I'm going to point it out to you as we go along. Because what's going to happen is there are some changes that are going to take place October 1st, and that's kind of the big date, you know, because that's the fiscal year for the country. It starts October 1. So there's going to be some information in the book that will go into effect October 1, but it's not going to stay in effect probably beyond a year. Okay? And we're going to talk about that. But there's been some changes, you know, little minor things like down payment requirements. Okay? That's one of our most recent ones, by the way. There are also changes on mortgage insurance premium. There are also some changes on cash down payment and the acceptable sources of cash down payment. Okay, there are also changes on HECM loans, and we are going to talk about HECM loans. We didn't used to spend a lot of time on reverse mortgages, which is what a HECM is, okay, home equity conversion mortgage, right? We're going to spend some time on that, and there have been some changes along those. So this is, I'm going to be talking about the past, the present, and the future as we go through this thing, okay? And hopefully it will all make sense to you and fit together. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start on page 1. And we're going to talk about, you know, what are some of the advantages of FHA. Now most of you have been doing FHA. There's a few that are just getting into it. But probably you all understand that there are some specific advantages to using FHA over other types of lending. Now, This is where I thought that we really missed the boat by not making FHA more accessible to homeowners, okay? Because there are some very big advantages to this. First of all, lower down payments. Now that has changed a little bit. We're going to talk about down payment requirements here. But it's typically less money down on an FHA than it would be on conventional lending, correct? Right? Yes? Yes. Okay. Also, seller can pay any and all closing costs and prepays. Okay? So that's an advantage. The cash reserves are not required under certain circumstances. I'm going to give you those circumstances where they are required. Okay? Definitely under 3 and 4 unit lending, because you can use FHA up to 4 units. There are cash requirements, but there are some other cash requirements that came into play with some of the new policies that came out. Gifted funds up to 100%. In other words, I can, go and not even use any of my own money and use FHA lending to get the loan. Higher and flexible qualifying ratios. Leniency on derogatory credit. Now, we used to always go in and say, you don't even need credit to do an FHA loan, because there really wasn't anything written into it regarding that particular. In other words, it didn't say credit score and all this stuff. But here's what's happened. Over the years, they have now introduced, for those of you who've been doing this, total scorecard, right? Okay, that's kind of FHA's automated underwriting system, right? Now, they do, the automated underwriting system does use credit scoring, and we're going to talk about the only credit score that comes up in FHA rules when we get into that side of it.